Hello guys, today I'm going to be telling you a horrifying story that happened with my 3 cousins that are all girls at my grandma's house in Ohio about 2 years ago. So let's get into it. This happened about 2 years ago at my grandma's house. It was me, my brother, and my 3 cousins that are all girls, and my grandparents divorced, so it was just my grandma for the weekend. So it was just a typical night. We went out to dinner at China Cottage. We came home back to her house, which, to be clear, she lives in a very shady, run-down neighborhood in Ohio, in Dayton. So she had lived there for about 2 years already. Anything horrifying like this happened until, and I was starting to think the neighborhood was safe until this night. Everything changed, and my whole perspective of going to her house and even just of the neighborhood changed on this night. Now, to start the story, we came home, we returned from dinner. It was about 9 o'clock. About an hour later, we sat, which we had something to go to the next day, so we had to get in bed a little early, about at 10:30. So about 10:15, if I remember correctly, we were getting ready to settle down and go to bed. Turn the lights down a little bit, settle down. But all of a sudden, we saw a car, which this wasn't very suspicious because there's a ton of cars that just park on the side of the street just beside everyone's houses. My grandma had a curtain and a towel over the window because she's about her privacy. She doesn't want anyone to be able to see inside of her house at all. So here's what happens. Some man in a shady little car pulled up beside her house in her car, and all of a sudden, we heard a man. I creeped out the window, and I promise you, this was one of the scariest things that's ever happened in my life. I had never experienced anything in my life like this. I kid you not, almost peeing my pants as I creeped out the window. I had a bottle of water in my hand. I almost dropped it in shock when I looked out to see the guy standing there with a bat in his hand right outside his car. And all of a sudden, he started approaching. And all this happening with my cousins shutting their mouths as they were yelling and fighting, because that's what cousins do. And all of a sudden, as he got closer, I started to realize something. I realized he wasn't alone. I started to see someone else in the car that he got out of. As he approached, I literally could not I felt my heart in my throat just wait. I ran into the bedroom to tell my grandma. She was disturbed by this, and all of a sudden, we could hear a small house. We could hear footsteps coming from the front door, and all of a sudden, a knock, as I literally was in shock, and I felt so insecure because it was just my grandma, and she's a smaller frame, older woman, and I would feel more comfortable, but the only thing that made me feel comfortable was that my grandma had a revolver in her house, ready, locked and loaded, and ready to fire at anyone. And we sat there for about 5 minutes, and then we heard another knock. This time it was more demanding and louder. We waited another 5 minutes. We didn't answer the door. This one was this was banging. This was a way more disturbing and aggressively louder knock. At this point, I didn't even know. I wanted to just throw up dead in my tracks. And this isn't even close to what the most next disturbing thing was. About 10 minutes later, we didn't hear any knocks or steps, and I looked out the window, and I promise you, I saw another car pull up with 3 large men with bats of the same kind getting out of the car, and my grandma hadn't called the police at this point. 2 of them went around the back side of the house, and there was the one man, and the other 3, which were the 2 from the previous car, went around the other side, and the other person that was already with them. They went around, and my grandma had a short fence. It was a very awkward fence. We went in my grandma's room and peeked out, and there they were, hopping the fence like it was nothing, with bats coming to the back door. The back door was, I promise you, the most disturbing thing hit me when I realized that we were just about an hour before. I went out to get something on the patio, and I promise you, I did not lock the back door. When this thought hit me, I literally felt like I was already about in shock, and I told my grandma, and this was when the most disturbing thing happened. I heard the man banging on the door, not even knowing that it was unlocked. And then all of a sudden, I heard the door open. We slammed the door and locked it. In shock, all of us, in her bedroom. She got her gun and her phone ready to call the police. While all this was happening, we heard the man roaming around the house. And all of a sudden, I will never forget this moment in my life when I heard the man knocking on my grandma's door. I felt like I was going to just pass out of fear. The soft, tender, slow, but fast knocks just came on that door, and I literally felt like my heart was just pounding at 300 pounds per minute. My grandma had a gun if they were to knock the door down. But this was about the most relieved I'd ever felt in my life. I heard one of the guys say, "Let's go, they're not coming out." And all of a sudden, I literally felt so relieved. I can't even explain to you how relieved I felt. We heard them. I feel like we're the luckiest people on earth. And all of a sudden, they left the house. Looked nothing harmed. I don't know. I felt like they would just steal everything. But we waited about probably 40 minutes of just terror, wondering if they said that for bait just to make us come out and they would still be there. That's why we waited 40 to 45 minutes. My grandma called because my parents were back at home in Kentucky because they had left us for our annual Cousins Week at my grandma's. Finally, she decided to call at about close to midnight, 11:40. We waited that long, called my cousin's parents, and they rushed over in fear. My uncle brought his Ruger LCP, his .22 shotgun, ready to fire if the men were there. As soon as they pulled up, they came in and told us it was okay to leave, that nobody was there. But there's just one more thing that happened that was pretty horrifying. When we went out to the patio, there was a note laying there, a piece of paper that I don't remember being there. And when I picked it up, heart almost dropped whenever they said apparently the motive was money, why they came in the first place. And it said, if you don't give us this amount of money, we will come back to kill you. And that made me so upset, just angry. At that point, I was mad. And I feared for my grandma's safety because she lived alone. But when we left, I literally have my phone ready any night for her to call me or my parents or anybody if she needed help. But I know I couldn't do anything because I lived 2 hours away. But 2 years later, nothing has ever happened at my grandma's house, anything close to that since. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be back with another video.